Guaranteeing the right to farm, Nebraska lawmakers may put it on the ballot. We'll explain straight ahead on Grow. Plus, what do senators plan to do about property taxes? We'll dig deeper. And hatching a new agribusiness, we'll have more on plans for a big-time investment in a new chicken hatchery in central Nebraska. And the benefits of cover crops for cattle and the soil. Get ready to grow. A Nebraska lawmaker with a background in agriculture wants to put the right to farm and ranch in the state constitution. That's our top story. Senator John Keane of Hartwell introduced the proposed constitutional amendment. He said it's in response to activists who may want to regulate animal welfare practices or limit GMOs. He said the amendment could limit the influence of out-of-state activists.
They can impinge upon the right of our producers to do their business to feed the world. And so certainly I think providing a constitutional protection to Nebraska's hardworking farmers and ranchers is a key part of protecting our industry.
Missouri voters recently approved a similar amendment, which was opposed by the Humane Society of the United States. Senator Keane says it's important to allow voters the final say. This could become a hot issue, and we will track it closely right here on Grow. And when it comes to property taxes, lawmakers say if it was easy, they would have done it by now. Certainly, there is consensus property tax relief is something they need to do, but there's no consensus on the solution.
But the check I write has gone up 180%.
The property taxes Kurt Friesen pays on his Hamilton County farm up 18% a year for a decade.
We can't keep doing that.
The corn grower and state senator says with farmers struggling to break even, now is the time for tax relief.
It varies from 60, 70, 80. There's places at $100 an acre adding to your cost of production, and we just can't be doing that when we're operating these types of markets.
We understand there's a concern.
Lawmakers have heard the message.
Our problem is trying to figure out how we can get that concern taken care of.
Especially since most of the money goes to schools. Farm Bureau supports a cap on the amount of property tax dollars
that could be used to fund education.
Some want more state dollars for rural schools. Others call that a tax shift. Revenue Committee Chair Mike Glore says another approach may be to slow down the growth in farmland values, at least for tax purposes. Lots of suggestions with no clear path forward.
Unfortunately, I don't think there is one big fix that is even possible.
I think we have to manage our expectations that, again, there will not be a silver bullet that's just going to correct this situation.
If farmers want major tax reform, it may not happen this year, but senators say they will work to do something.
Will it mean a big difference in an individual's property tax bills? I doubt it, but there will be some differences made, and I think it will put us on a path to make changes not only this year but going forward.
Dozens of jobs are headed to central Nebraska with a big-time investment from an international agribusiness. NTV's Sarah Kirkley has more on the proposed chicken hatchery.
Between the hatchery itself and nearby egg-laying facilities and pullet barns, local economic leaders say the Grand Island area will get about a $50 million capital investment with this project.
Hendrik Issa has chosen Grand Island.
It's an announcement 8 months in the making. An industrial park currently grazing cattle will soon hatch chickens.
The hatchery in Grand Island will supply chickens that will provide eggs to feed over 24 million people throughout Nebraska, the United States, and countries all over the world.
Peter Mumm says most of those chickens will be headed from here to states west of Ohio. But before they do, 30 to 50 people will be needed to hatch those eggs.
These new jobs will satisfy Grand Island's obligation to the state of Nebraska for the community development block grant funds that were used to develop infrastructure.
It's a relief for city leaders who are ready to benefit.
They'll be using our utilities, they'll be building, using our materials, our local contractors, and so just that in itself would be a plus.
It also demonstrates that Grand Island and the state of Nebraska can compete globally for jobs, technology, and business.
Hendrix ESA was started just last year with the backing of international company Hendrix Genetics. They say, though once hatched, the chicks will spend less than a day at what the company calls a hospital-like clean facility. Biosecurity and disease prevention are key.
We cannot afford to have any disease come into that hatchery with that quantity of birds, and the responsibility of us to ship them to all different states and not spreading the disease.
Now Hendrix ESA is looking for landowners within 100 miles of Grand Island to raise the chickens that will lay these eggs. They say they've had a representative in the area looking to make these connections for about 2 months now. As for the hatchery itself, that will be open in early 2017.
Thanks, Sarah. Here's a look at the hatchery process. Contracted farmers raise chicken in 17 weeks. The chickens are then sent to a local layer facility to reproduce. The eggs are then gathered and brought to the hatchery. The eggs are incubated for 18 days, then put into a hatching machine to hatch. Chicks are vaccinated and put into boxes with air holes and arrive at the customer's location within 24 hours of hatching. Elsewhere in Grand Island, it'll be racing as scheduled at Fauner Park. The Racetrack and Horsemen's Association reached an agreement around Christmas to get the horses and trainers working on time. There had been concern because of how long negotiations took, but Fauner Park's Bruce Swihart says the delay was simply because of new leadership for the horsemen. Racing begins February 26th and runs through Derby Day, Saturday, May 7th. Nebraska's winter wheat is in good condition according to the latest government snapshot. The USDA reports temperatures were well above average in the eastern half of the state in December and around average in the west. There's snow cover in many fields, which has left feedlots muddy. Cattle and calf conditions rate mostly good, and about 90% of winter wheat rates fair to good. Cut the sugar, but you can leave lean meat in your diet. That's according to the new USDA guidelines. Beef producers were concerned after an earlier draft of those nutritional guidelines questioned beef on the grounds of environmental sustainability. But the finalized guidelines say lean meats are an important part of a healthy diet, something a Texas cattleman who is also a physician was happy to hear.
To recognize all the strong science that supports the role that beef plays in a healthy diet. There's been tremendous amounts of research and scientific evidence on the value of the nutrition of beef.
The National Cattlemen's Beef Association says 38 cuts of beef, including sirloin steak, meet government guidelines to be considered lean. The USDA guidelines also encourage people to replace meat with seafood and eat more whole grains. Rumbling through the Sandhills, an earthquake rattled many in Custer County this past week, and the ranch that was at the epicenter, well, that was featured previously right here on Grow.
And all of a sudden there was just a shaking and a horrible rumble.
This picturesque Sandhills Ranch, the epicenter of an earthquake, magnitude 3.5.
People in Broken Bow didn't know what was going on. I heard reports over the radio that somebody thought maybe a plane had crashed at the airport because they lived out that way, or maybe a train had derailed.
Kevin and Shannon Cooksley have seen a lot.
Weather and the droughts and the natural disasters.
But an earthquake is a first for their ranch, and their recently remodeled home, a carpenter said, was well built.
To make it shake, it had to be, fairly strong or fairly close anyway.
This is by any standard, a weak earthquake. Certainly strong enough to be felt, not strong enough to do significant damage.
At the University of Nebraska, the state geologist says, from a scientific perspective, each quake helps them learn more.
These earthquakes that occur in the continental interior, away from major mapped faults, are a little bit mysterious.
Matt Jokel says the bedrock outcroppings that usually help them map faults just aren't there in Custer County, but despite the unknowns,
they don't have anything to be terribly afraid of.
The Cooksleys leased the land at the epicenter. Jokel says it was shallow but widespread. Experts say there's no cause for alarm, no oil or gas exploration here, but small earthquakes will happen again in Nebraska.
I think it's pretty likely we'll have another one within 3 years.
Up next, we dig deeper into the property tax debate, and still to come, farmers go back to the future, a look at cover crops.